So let's now take a look at how we would add morphs into our character. And I'm going to be looking at this mainly from the face morph perspective, or any other morph that you want to trigger manually and animate. So facial expressions are a good example of this. So I've went ahead and I've already created some morphs for my character here. As you can see, we have a straight right eyebrow and a both eyebrows up morph, an A phoneme and an O phoneme. Now just please bear with me, I'm not a modeler. I created these fairly quickly just by editing the mesh a bit. I'm sure you may do a much better job at creating morph shapes for your character. Or if you're like me, you're better off hiring a professional modeler to do them for you. But for the purpose of this exercise, these will suffice. So I have these morphs, and before I go into how you add them to the actual rig, because this is not the actual rig, this is a separate character mesh that I've been working with, and this is actually quite advantageous because it allows the rigger and the modeler to work in parallel. As the rigger is rigging the character, the modeler can be creating as many shapes as needed for the character, and then the rigger can just bring them into the rig, which is what we will look at in the next video. In this video, I wanted to show you first a few tools that Modo has to edit vertex maps that are quite nice, and I'm sure they're going to come in handy to you in the future. So for the purpose of that, I'm going to focus on the eyebrow morphs that I created. So let's start with this one. As you can see, we have a morph for the right eyebrow when he probably frowns or something like that. But we don't have one for the left eyebrow. So we would like to just take this morph and apply it to the other side of the character. And that's actually very simple and easy to do. All we need to do is use the vertex map mirror tool that Modo has. So in order to use it, the first thing you need to do is specify the mirror axis here. So we know it's the x-axis that we're transferring from one side to the other. And all we need to do is go to vertex map mirror, and we select the vertex map that we're mirroring. In this case is eyebrow R straight, and you give it a name to the new vertex map that you're mirroring onto. And you got to remember that you cannot mirror onto existing vertex maps. You have to mirror to new ones. So in this case, I'm just creating a new one called eyebrow L straight to mirror to. We click on OK, and if I select it, you will see that your morph map is right there. And this is one case where the mirror tool actually does a great job at mirroring our vertex map. So now we have vertex map for both. We can animate them separately. So that's awesome. Let's take now a look at a second scenario, which is we have this morph map, and it comes with both eyebrows already raised. And of course, you want to have two different morphs that you can trigger separately, one for the left side, one for the right side, okay? And this is something that maybe might happen, for example, if the modeler has created a very precise facial expression, all sculpted for the character, and it comes in as a single mesh, which means a single morph, and you want to be able to split that into different parts that you can trigger separately. You might say, okay, you know what, based on this facial expression, I need to have a morph only for one eyebrow, then the other eyebrow, then one cheek, then the other cheek, and so on and so forth. You can split a particular expression into as many morph maps as you need. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now to do that, I'm going to need a few extra maps to work with. And in this case, because it's the eyebrows, I'm just going to use, I'm going to create a few selection sets for different parts of the character. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if I can use the edge loop tool to select, no, I'm going to do it by hand. Use select and vertices. So let's select a few vertices. I need to turn off my symmetry because otherwise, actually no, let's leave it on. I'm going to show you why in a second. And let's just select the vertices that belong to the eyebrows. Actually, you know what? Let's just do this. And then deselect what we don't need. We don't need this, guys. We don't need any of that. We certainly don't need any of this. And we don't need this either. Nor this guy. Okay. So there we go. We have both eyebrows selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a selection set for those vertices. Okay, I'm going to turn off my symmetry and do select, assign selection set, and we're going to call these eyebrows all. Okay. Now I'm going to deselect one side. Let's deselect these guys and create another selection set and call it eyebrow, actually. And this is the right side of the character. And now I'm going to select again both sides. And to do that, I'm going to go to vertices in the statistics tab by selection set. And I'm going to click on eyebrows all. So that selects both of them again. And then I'm going to deselect the other side and create a third selection set. Eyebrow, this is the left side. Okay. So now we have these three selection sets created. And actually the eyebrows all I don't need anymore. I was just concerned about the eyebrow R and L. Okay. But that's okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the C up vertex map and I'm going to split it into two different vertex maps based on these selection sets. So how do we do that? Well, Modo comes with a really handy tool that we can use to do this. And basically what it does is it does math operations on vertex maps, which is something very, 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 very useful. So there are two versions of the tool. There is a model one and there's an interactive one. So I prefer to use the interactive one because it allows me to see exactly what I'm about to do. So before we do so, let's create two new morph maps. And one is going to be eyebrow L up, and it's going to be empty, and eyebrow R up. So these are the vertex, morph maps that we're going to generate based on the C up morph map. Let's start, for example, with the right side. So we're going to go to vertex map, and no, this is not the one. The math tool. There you go. So we get our math tool over here, and we need to set up a few options. First one is the destination map that we're going to store the information onto. So I'm going to be working on eyebrow R up. So we select it here from the list. As you can see, all the different vertex maps have a type in the second part of their name. So MORF is a morph map. Pick, it's a selection set or a pick map. And there's other types. So we'll select the morph map, eyebrow R up. Okay. Then we're going to set our two source maps that we're going to be working from. The first one is going to be the morph map with both eyebrows up, eyebrows C up. And the second one is going to be our right eyebrow selection set. Okay. So what we're going to do is to be able to use this selection set as a mask, what I need to do is multiply them both together. So we're going to set our operation to multiply. Okay. And I can increase the amount to start to see the effect of the operation. Now you're going to say, well, wait a second. How come we're seeing them both rise up if we're specifying that one is just one side? Well, for this to work, I need to set the source B map, which is a selection set, its mode to component. So as you can see, it immediately switches only one side to be active. Now the interesting thing is that it's using the other side of the character. So we can try to set this to the eyebrow L pick map, and now we get the correct side. What I'm thinking is going on is that the selected vertices are the ones that are actually going to be left alone, and it's only not the non-selected ones that get affected. So now that we have our right side map working, we can just drop the tool, and let's now go to the left eyebrow, and we do the same. We don't need to apply or anything because the tool was totally interactive. So we do the same. It's a multiply, but now we're going to select the right eyebrow. And let's, sorry, yes. No, that's fine. Let's see what's going on. Oh, of course. I have to set this to eyebrow L up. There you go. There we go. So L up, everything 100%. Everything is fine. So you can drop the tool, and now we have both eyebrows working completely independently from one another. So this tool, it's actually very powerful. It can operate on different types of vertex maps for different purposes. If you want, you can just go and check the documentation around it, and you'll see that it has many different uses. But for the purpose of this exercise, you can see that the modeler could give you a totally finished sculpted face the way the animation director wants it, like precisely down to each vertex. And they can just create different selection sets to affect different parts of the face, and use that to split your expression into different morph maps that you can trigger individually, if that is what the animation department would like you to do. So that's it. We use this to split out our morph maps. So now we have our O phoneme, our A phoneme, both eyebrows up, which might or not be useful depending on if you might want to use it or not. One eyebrow up, one eyebrow straight, the other eyebrow up, the other eyebrow straight. And in the next video, we're going to look at how to integrate these new morph maps into the actual rigged character. So see you there. Okay, in the previous video, we saw how we created a few morph maps on a mesh, and basically just edited these to have different shapes or expressions on the face of our character. But truth is, most of the times, our morph targets, or the shapes you want to use for facial animation or other types of morph-based deformation, are not going to be created this way. This was rather unorthodox to do, but I still wanted to do it so that we could take a look at some of the vertex map tools that we have. In most cases, a modeler will go and actually just create clones of a mesh and just edit the mesh, model on top of the mesh. So that's what I've done in this other file. I've just taken a clone of the ace body, and I've created this smile expression, and I've also gone and created this frown facial expression. And it was just basic modeling. So in most cases, this is what you're going to get, especially because today most models, at least character models, are most of the time done in third-party applications such as ZBrush, which allow for advanced sculpting workflows. Modo has some pretty decent sculpting tools, but a lot of modelers really favor using ZBrush, for example, to create their models. So you're going to be bringing those in as meshes into Modo. So what I want to do is, in this video, cover both workflows, how to bring in external meshes, and also how to bring in morph maps that we have created already that we might want to transfer onto a different mesh. So let's look at both things. I'm going to start with the external meshes, and as I said, these can be meshes edited inside of Modo, or you can bring them in from other applications. So let's take a look at both. I'm gonna just bring in these two meshes that I've created, and I'm gonna drag and drop them onto my rigging file. I just want the I don't even have children here, but I'll leave it on anyway. I don't care about the shaders, and I'm not gonna remove the source items just in case I have to go back to my original file. So there they are. Let's take a look at this. I can close this now. Here we have one, a second one, and let's go into our Ace Geo and let's hide the eyes. I'm gonna hide the rigs too for the head, neck, and face, so we can have a cleaner workspace to work with. And I'm gonna go into the setup tab. So we have, let's start with this one right here. You have to be careful though that when you bring in meshes from other applications, especially something as ZBrush that is has all these different subdivision levels and stuff like that, that the generated topology matches the one you're using in your rig. So basically don't try to not have any topology changes unless you're also updating the one in the rig. That's a good principle to follow. So for this guy, how do I get this shape into my main rig mesh, which is this one right here? Well, it's actually not that complex. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the subdivision surface so I can work just with the straight polygons. This is just for performance purposes. And what you need to do is, the first thing, we need to set up a morph map for our mesh to receive this one. So I'm going to call it, I think it's Smile, the one we're working with. Yeah, it's the Smile. So let's create here a new morph map, and we're gonna call him facial expression smile. Okay, and now with these two together, I can go, and in the vertex map we have this background morph tool, which basically what it will do is it will take any shape that is displayed in the viewport, any mesh that is displayed in the viewport but not selected, as the morph shape that it needs to transfer to this morph map. So all you do is you can leave it at background, or if you're unsure of which mesh to use, because you have several meshes that need to be here in your setup workspace, you can control select the one that you are going to transfer, in this case my smile mesh, and you can use the last selected option, which is again very useful if there are several meshes displayed in your scene. So that's what I'm going to use now. I'm going to click on OK. Okay, so now I have this mesh transferred onto my smile morph map. Let's hide the original that we used. If I go to my model workspace, for example, you will see that it's right there as part of my bind mesh. So that's great. We're done with one. Let's go to the second one. I'll go back to the setup layout. And let's take this frown mesh. This one has an interesting thing happening though. Let's take a look. I'm going to hide my original mesh. And as you can see here, let's say that the modeler decided that he was not going to work on the rest of the body of the character, so he just deleted it. And he left only the head. And let's say that he generated lots of different expressions with only heads. Now, in lots of applications, this could be a big problem, because usually to be able to morph one mesh into another, a lot of applications use a system that maps the vertices of one mesh onto the other and just basically is moving deltas. So that could be a big problem, because now our vertex count does not match in between our source mesh and the target mesh. They're both totally different. And if I tried to do a background morph just like this, let's say I do a new morph map, and it's going to be facial expression, and this one is frown. If I do this and then I select my frown mesh and I do vertex map, background morph, and I do exactly the same, when I check my morph, this is what you're gonna get: a totally distorted mesh. And the reason is what I just explained. The vertex count on both meshes is totally different. So that's not going to work. So how do we go and work around this? Because obviously the modeler is not going to redo all his work in case he was working with a different mesh. Let's start by selecting our frown morph map. Let's delete it because that's not going to be useful at all. There we go. So what we need to do is the following. Fortunately, Modo is pretty smart about these things. So let me hide the mesh we have. Actually, I'm going to start with that one. No, yeah, this guy. Let's first create our target morph map. And it's going to be facial expression. We said it was frown. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to hide my mesh for now, and then I'm going to bring up the one I'm using. So what I need to do is Modo allows you to select components that are going to be used by the background morph tool when it's transferring the vertex deltas. So I need to select these vertices exactly as they are on the meshes I'm working with. So let's go into this one, and I'm just going to select all the vertices just to see what I've got. And then I'm going to unhide my bind mesh. What I want to see is which vertices we are talking about. And it seems to be everything in the head down to the edge loop where the neck starts. Actually, the clothes of the torso start. That's what we need to select. So I'm going to now select my bind mesh, go into vertex component mode, and select exactly those vertices. So let's select all this to get started. Well, not these guys for now. And then let's just do a grow operation. Let's grow our selection. And one more time. There you go. Oops, looks like we have some vertices selected over here. There you go. So this should give us the exact vertex selection that we had in our other mesh. Okay, so now with my mesh selected and the morph map selected and the correct vertices selected, I can control select my second mesh, the one that is the source for the morph shape, and go to vertex map background morph. But it seems it's not visible. Let me see if I need to. I'm gonna reselect it. Let's see if that refreshes the command. Nope. So this guy first, frown, vertices, then this guy. Well, I'm gonna leave it without the let's see what's going on. There you go. I had to refresh the vertex map for some reason. So let's go to our vertices and then to the target. Now I can apply the background morph, last selected, say OK. And let's hide this and see what we got. If I go to the model, you'll see that I have my frown shape. And it's working perfectly. The rest of the body is intact. So that works great when you are forced to bringing shapes from pieces of the character that might have been modeled or retouched separately. So the modeler, this gives them a little bit of liberty because they can delete parts of the model that they don't need to work with and focus on the ones they need to. Obviously, it's a lot faster and easier to do it with the entire mesh, but if for some reason you prefer not to, or it happens that it doesn't work out that way, you can always just select the components you're going to transfer to and transfer. Of course, still, the topology that you're transferring needs to match the one that is the source, even if just for the selected components. So that is one way to go about transferring shapes, in this case meshes, into Morph Maps. And now we have 2 of them working. So we're doing great. I can now go ahead and delete those meshes. Okay, and now let's see what we can do about the ones that came in as Morph Maps. So in this case, we have this mesh over here that has all these Morph Maps that hold targets. And this is also a useful workflow when you need to transfer expressions between similar characters. Modo allows you to do that. You can transfer Morph Maps in between meshes as long as they are pretty similar. Like for example, if I had a monster mesh that was modeled from this guy and they just changed a few things, like instead of the hair he has horns, and they changed the face a little bit, but the topology is pretty close, I can work in the expressions for this character and transfer them to that monster or whatever it is. So let's bring him into our rig file. There it is. Okay, and now we have these morphs, and let's see how we transfer these morphs onto this mesh that doesn't have them. So what we need to do is we need to have the one that has our morphs visible in the scene. Okay, it has to be visible, and you have to hide everything else, because this one we're going to use a tool that does not have the last selected option. It just uses the background mesh. So we need to have it visible. And then we go to our ace body bind mesh, and we have to create the map that we're going to transfer into. So I'm going to use the same name. So let's start with this one, with the eyebrow L straight. I'm going to copy the name. Then I'm going to come into my target mesh, create a new map with that name. Okay, and have it selected. So that's all you have to do. Select your mesh and select the morph map that you're transferring into. And let's go into vertex map, and we're going to use the transfer tool. Okay, so the transfer tool is going to immediately identify which other mesh item is visible in the scene but not selected, and is going to go and find all the maps, all the vertex maps that it can in that mesh item. So it asks you, okay, which is the source vertex map that you want to transfer from? In this case, I'm going to say eyebrow L straight. And what type of map is it? It's a morph map, a relative morph map. And then you have some options into how it's going to look for matching vertices on that mesh. So I'm going to leave them to the default, which works very well for our purposes. And remember, we're transferring to this eyebrow L straight map. And just click on OK. And after a few seconds, your character will take that expression. As you can see here, I'm going to hide the source. There we have our eyebrow straight morph map. And we're going to do that for all the other morph maps that we have. So we have an eyebrow left up. Let's copy that. And let's go here and create a new map, eyebrow L up. Okay. And we're going to repeat the same thing. Vertex map. Let's check that this guy, yeah, it's eyebrow L up. Vertex map, transfer. This time it's eyebrow L up, and the rest of the options are left alone. And there you go. We have our eyebrow up. And you would do that, and as you can see, it's a pretty simple operation for every vertex map that you have. I'll do one more, and then I'll probably stop the recording. So let's do this eyebrow R straight. Let's go here, new map, eyebrow R straight. Okay, and vertex map, transfer from R straight. And there you go. Okay. All right. Let's do one more. R up. Come here. New map. R up. Vertex map. Transfer from R up. There it goes. Actually, let's just do the remaining ones. Not going to take too long. So C up, which is both of them, copy, come here, new map. Okay, vertex map, transfer, C up, and there they are. And what's left? 2 phonemes. Let's copy this one. These are for the mouth. New map, vertex map, transfer, our A shape. There you go. And the last one, I'm just going to copy the name, come on here, create the new map, and transfer from our O map. Oh, this is interesting. This one didn't quite come in very well. Let's take a look at that. Let's see, our A1 is not good either. This one is fine. All these are good. Yeah, this one seems to have some problems. So let's take a look at that one. And actually, it seems that the one for the A also has some problems. Let's take a look. Yeah, this one didn't transfer very well. And the reason is, in this case, the vertices are too far from the ones that we have in our source geometry to try to transfer from. Okay, so let's see if we can get some of the other options to work better for us, and if not, there's another option on how to get this to work. So let's go back to our bind mesh, and let's take these 2 maps and delete them. And let's create a new one for the shape that gives us the most trouble seems to be the O shape. Oh, I'm in the wrong file now. This guy. This one right here. So let's see if we can get that one to transfer correctly. So we're going to just create the new map. Okay. And let's say vertex map transfer. Okay. So we have different spaces and methods to transfer from. So in this case, we're using a local space, which is okay. And then we have two types of methods to determine where the vertices are going to be taken from. In this case, we have raycast and distance. Let's see if distance does a better job at this. This one is, as you can see, somewhat slower. It has to really look around for matching vertices in the mesh, and no, that didn't really help that much. So let's delete it again, and we're gonna have to use a different approach with these two remaining morph maps. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the background morph tool. That's going to come in really handy in this case. And then we use it is we're going to select our target mesh, the one that will hold the morphs. And first let's create the morphs that we're going to use on that. Actually, I'm going to start with the O one because that one is the most problematic. So if this works on this one, it's going to for sure work on the next one. So the important thing here is that you go back to your mesh that you're trying to transfer from, and you select the morph map so it takes the actual shape of that morph map. And also for that to work, you need to be either in the model workspace, or if you're in the setup layout, you need to go into the viewport options by hitting the O hotkey, and you have to disable enable deformers. So this will allow you to see just like the same type of of information you see in a modeling layout. Okay, you can do that. In this case, I'm just going to be in the model layout. Okay, so now that this guy has taken that particular shape, I'm going to go back to my target geometry. This is not it. It's this one. And I'm going to select the target map that I'm transferring to, and then I'm going to control select the mesh that I'm transferring from and use the background morph tool with last selected. And as you can see, this one works perfectly. So since we're bypassing the map transfer tool, which works directly on the maps, and we are just basically taking an actual geo shape and transferring it onto the mesh on a vertex by vertex basis. And for this, as we know, the vertices have to match. So it's two different ways of working. And actually all these other vertex maps, these morph maps that we've transferred, you can transfer them the same way. You can use the vertex, the background morph tool instead of using the vertex map transfer tool. It's up to you. It depends on what feels faster. Or the vertex, the transfer tool is very fast to work with, but as you can see, it has certain limitations. So in that case, the background morph tool is pretty reliable. So let's do the last one. The last one is going to be this one right here. I have to just we have to select the mesh again. Oh, it has to be visible. Otherwise, Modo won't let me select the maps right here. So let's copy that name, go into our target one, paste it as a new morph map, and let's just control select this one right here and do the background morph tool with last selected, and there we go. That's great. So let's check all of our maps here. One eyebrow. This is our source geometry, the original mesh. We've changed one eyebrow, goes up. The other one is straight, then goes up, then both go up. Then we have our frown, our smile, the A and the O. And that's it. I guess that this basically shows you how to transfer all of your mesh edits that you need as morphs for your mesh. And as I mentioned, in this case we were targeting just facial animation for now. You can use morphing for other purposes, but this is what we needed to cover in this video. So now that everything is transferred onto the character, let's get these deformations going on top of the ones we have for the body in the next video. Okay, so now that we have all of our morph maps inside of the mesh, and depending on what kind of character you're working with, this can be this can go from a few of them to several dozen of these morph maps. Now that they're there working, we need to know, okay, how do I go about animating them? Because if we go to the setup layout, you will see that no matter what you do, well, there's no way to actually get them to do anything on your character's face at all. So how do we get these guys to trigger or to deform the mesh? Well, it's very easy. There's a deformer in Modo that will basically take a given morph map and allow you to deform the mesh using that morph map as a target shape. And it has some controls to control how much deformation you want and stuff like that. So the easiest way to create these deformers without having to go and do that manually in the schematic view is you select a morph map that already contains morph information in it, and you can just right click on it and say add morph influence. And this is going to create the influence and the control locator for the influence for you to deform the mesh with. So I'm going to start, for example, with the last one because it's the most obvious one, so you can see the effect. And I said add morph influence, and you will see that immediately your mesh takes the shape of the morph map that you had stored in it. And if we also look at the rest of the scene, you will see that there's a big locator created right here, and we have a new object down here in our list of items in the scene, and it says Morph Influence. So this is the one that is controlling how much deformation is applied to the character based on the morph map that you had stored. And it's basically this locator right here. And you can see you can select it and it gets selected here. So let's very quickly look at the properties for it. You will see that it has an enable switch, so you can turn it on or off. There's the morph map that is being referenced by this influence, and there's the strength. Okay, so with this strength you can actually go from 0, which is your original mesh, up to 100, which is the target morph map mesh. And actually you can go beyond that, and as you can see, the deltas on the vertices are extrapolated to derive a new shape. And you can also go below 0 to have the same effect in the opposite direction. So this allows the animator to exaggerate a little bit, even if the target shape didn't reach that far. So that's very handy. So now that you have this created, let's actually give these guys meaningful names. So I'm going to go back to my mesh and select the morph map that we had, copy that name, and then go to this new item, and I'm going to rename it to Morph Influence. That's my prefix, and then the name of the morph map that it controls. Okay, and let's create here in our rig. Let's create a new group locator. And we're going to call it group morph influences. Okay, and we're going to drag and drop this guy in there. So we're going to put all of our morph influences in this group locator. So now I can go to the next map. Let's say I'm going to go now with the A1. Let's copy this and then just add morph influence. The mouth takes the shape of an A. Let's rename it. And let's drag and drop it onto the corresponding folder. And let's set its strength to 0. So I always go back to 0. Now here's the neat thing, because these guys are relative morph maps, I can actually combine them. I can apply some of the deformation coming out of the A morph map with some of the shape of the O, and I get this sort of like French shape. And this allows you to combine many different maps for different parts of the face too. So that's the whole point of having this system. Let's continue working on creating the rest. Now I'm going to go with the smile. Let's copy that. And right click, add morph influence, and then rename it. And set it to 0. And move it over to our group locator, and so on. As I continue to do the others, I'll pause the video once I'm done with this last one, so that we can just jump ahead and see the finished work. Okay. So give me a second and I'll just do the other ones. Okay, I'm done. As you can see, I have here in my group locator all my morph influences, and they've all been set to 0, and they're working just fine. The only thing I'm going to change about them is the size of the locator, because I don't really like them to be that big. So let's make those locators smaller. That's more decent. And actually, since we're not going to be needing them right away, I'm just going to hide the entire group so I don't see them right there. We are going to later on build a little panel that we can use to control these morphs, because obviously it would be very cumbersome if every time the animator was animating something on the face of the character, he had to come, open the hierarchy, find the actual morph influence he intends to change, and then come here to the spinner and start moving that, and then go back to somewhere else in the scene, and it would just be not very efficient. So we're going to create a different mechanism for him to control these objects. For now, all we needed was to create them, name them properly, make sure everything works fine, and put them somewhere where we can easily find them later. So we're done with the facial morphing part of our character, and as you can see, we can also combine that with some of our facial rigs. Let's try that right now. Let's go and see where is the here it is, neck and head. Now here's an interesting thing that you need to take into account, and it has to do with this part of our workspace, and I'm going to show you something quite interesting. I'm going to open up the character's jaw like so. Okay, that's just fine. It looks like I created a keyframe right there. Doesn't matter. And now I'm going to take the O shape and try to make his mouth go into an O shape. So as you can see, both combine very well. It could happen though sometimes that you see the character go back to the original shape that it had when it comes to the actual morph map. So in this case, it could happen that he closes his mouth and takes the O shape. What you have to do is make sure that your order of operations here is set correctly. And it also depends on the kind of morph map that you're using. In this case, since our morph maps are relative, then we have no problem with this. If they were absolute, we would have more of a problem. So what you can try is taking your morph influences and moving them below your normalizing folder. Okay, so that might actually help improve things. But in this case, we have no problem. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a deform folder, which is just a regular folder, and I'm going to call it morph influences. And I'm going to put all these guys in there. Okay. So it looks like things are going pretty well for our character. Let's continue working and see if hold on, I just wanted to test the rest of the jaw controls are actually working fine. He still has that O shape. Now he's puckering or something. So yeah, we're doing good. This pretty much ends up with the basic character setup that we needed to do for the deformations on the character to look good and be functional. There's a few more advanced things that we can do, but this covers the basic setup that you'll probably have to do on every character you work on. So we're looking good. Let's keep going further.